Let's kick ass for the working class. I am so honored to have my brothers and sisters all with me for this great endorsement. Before I get into my few words, I want to just say a few things by way of intro. First, you heard from Ray Pfeiffer earlier today. I was with him yesterday. He is one of the great men that I have ever met in my life. Ray, as you know, is a firefighter, rushed to the towers, got cancer. We worked hard to get the Zadroga bill done. He was down in Washington despite the pain all the time. And he reminds me of the Bible. Because the Bible says when something horrible befalls you, it's easy to curse the darkness, to say, why me? It's saint-like to light a candle, prevent it from happening ever again. And that's what Ray Pfeiffer did. And let's just have a round of applause for him. I don't know if he's still here. And then on another happy note, I saw my friend Julie Kushner. I started out with UAW in 9A, working at NYU to see that the auxiliaries got paid a fair wage and were able to unionize. And now it looks like we're going to have a good decision from Columbia as well, and may what New York labor did spread across the country. So auxiliaries are paid well. So it's great to be here. It's really a historic moment, because America's at a turning point. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't have to tell you, brothers and sisters, how serious this is and how much I care about labor. I'll tell you one little story which shows you my labor roots. So my grandfather was one of 18 children. He was the last of one of 3 of the last ones. My great-grandfather was actually a famous rabbi in Eastern Europe. And for those of you who know the scriptures, the first commandment of God to man in the Bible is be fruitful and multiply. Well, this guy believed. But they were very poor because all they did was study. They weren't allowed to do other things. By the way, I said this to my Democratic caucus once. I told them this story, and Byron Dorgan, a droll Norwegian, great guy against trade. Anyway, droll Norwegian from the Middle West said, he had 18 kids? I said, yeah. He said he wasn't just studying. But in any case, because they were so poor, the youngest 3 were sent to America with an uncle. But the uncle was a ne'er-do-well. He didn't do much. My grandfather came at age 3. I went to Ellis Island, and I saw actually the manifest on the ship for him and his brother and his sister. And so he only graduated from what they called in those days the 1A, first half of the first grade. And he had nowhere to live, no one to raise him. He was a street urchin. He'd steal apples from the push carts. He'd sleep in doorways. One day when he's 14, it's pouring rain. And he sees all these people going into this big building, and he just goes in for shelter. And what is going on in that building? What was the building? The building was the Labor Temple, built by Samuel Gompers, the founder of the AFL-CIO, to teach on the Lower East Side the young German, Irish, Italian, Polish, Jewish immigrants about the labor movement. He went in there, and guess who the guest speaker was? Eugene V. Debs. And he heard this speech, and Debs was evidently a great orator and got religion. He became a union man. And he ended up with the paper workers up in Utica, New York. He worked in a tissue factory and helped organize the paper workers. It was the Tallarico brothers, some may remember, back in the 30s and 40s who did that. And became a labor guy. Okay. World War II occurs. No more union organizing, and he basically loses his job. And so he has to do something. He invests $600 in a little exterminating business and he bought it from a German American who was sure the Nazis were going to bomb New York, and this guy was moving to Montana. And my father, by the way, who had enlisted the first day, was flying over the hump. He was in the Army Air Force as a navigator. They had taught him radar. But my grandfather forms this business. He's the boss, right? He's got 3 workers. But he went to the 3 workers. The first thing he did when he took over this little business is he said, I want to teach you how to form a union and ask me for more money. And his picture was in the halls in Brooklyn they were just organizing, of the pest control union, that's what it was called in those days, as one of the founders. So my grandfather may be the only boss in New York who founded a labor union. So labor has been in my bones. Labor has been in my bones since I started, and you all know our long and true and solid relationship. When I ran in 1974 for the Assembly, I was 23. I wanted to run. No one thought I'd win but Labor. In fact, Canigliaro knows this place because he's from my neighborhood. I went into my local barber, Frankie, when I was running. I said, Frankie, he'd give me every haircut since I was a little boy. I said, Frankie, would you put a poster in the window? He says, sure, kid. And then he says, kid, I never told you this. I'm not only the local barber, I'm the local bookie. You're the 50-to-1 underdog. How much you want to bet on yourself? The only people I had in my corner were labor. You heard from CWA, Morty Barr, who was then the head of Region 1, was involved. The UFT, as they were then called, was involved. Paul Hall, who was head of the Seafarers Union, whose headquarters, international headquarters, was on 4th Avenue in Brooklyn, was involved. And I won. So labor put me in. I've never forgotten it to that day, and I always say to my brothers and sisters from labor, you've been there when I needed you. I will always be there when you need me. So thank you for this endorsement, and we on to great things. Now, thank you. So this is a very serious election. America is in a cranky, sour mood. In general, we're a bright, sunny country. We are. Americans are a can-do people. We say we want to fix problems. We're not ideologues. We just say, give us a problem, we'll roll up our sleeves, we'll fix it. The only time America gets in a dark mood is when incomes decline, when middle-class incomes go down. And as you know, better than anybody else, they've been going down since the year 2000. For 15 years, middle-class incomes have declined. It's harder to stay in the middle class if you're there. It's harder to get to the middle class if you're struggling to get there. And I'll get into the reasons why. Unions is probably number 1. But I just wanted to say that, you know, I look out my window in Brooklyn. I'm still the first senator from Brooklyn in 180 years. And I see that lady with the torch. I live on the 10th floor. For me, a vacation is to barbecue. Go someone's house and barbecue, because we can't do that in our apartment house. Anyway, I see the lady with the torch. And if you ask most Americans, what does that torch mean? It means the American dream. And what does the American dream mean to you? And the average American wouldn't put it in fancy, highfalutin language. The average American would say, it means if I work hard, I'll be doing better 10 years from now than I'm doing today, and my kids will be doing still better than me. That's all they want. That's all Americans want. Work hard and do a little better. And that isn't happening. That isn't happening. Why isn't it happening? It's mainly because over the last 30 years, and particularly since 2010, the hard right, led by a few wealthy, greedy, evil oligarchs, have had a grip on our whole country. They've had a grip on our whole country. And they have stalled the middle class. They have helped the very few at the top who are doing great. And Americans don't begrudge people at the top doing great as long as they're doing okay. But when the people at the top stand in the way and do things that make it harder for the average middle-class person to stay in the middle class, and the average person struggling to get to the middle class to get there, that's a different story. And that's what's happened. That is what's happened. And so, ladies and gentlemen, this election is so vital. To elect Hillary Clinton as president, to elect a Democratic majority where, God willing, I'll be the majority leader, is so, so, so important. It's important for three reasons. First, the most obvious, economic. We've got to get middle-class incomes going again. We've got to get the middle class stronger again. We can't have the middle class be slipping away, and we can't have most Americans think the greatest days of the middle class are over. How do we do that? We need a president. We need a Congress that's going to do things, obvious, smart things. Cahill knows about this. We need a hundreds of billion-dollar infrastructure bill to build across this country our infrastructure. Our roads, our tunnels, our bridges, our water, our sewer, our power, our broadband. Hundreds of billions. It's infrastructure. If you don't have infrastructure, you can't grow. And these guys have strangled it. We need that. And we're going to get that done if we take over the presidency and the majority. We need to get that minimum wage up to $15. We need to say if you work hard, you can live a life of dignity. When you work 40 hours a week, you should be able to live a life of dignity. I brought to the State of the Union a guest named Sharika who lived in Eastern New York. She cleaned toilets and made minimum wage. I was introduced to her by 32 BJ. And I've gotten to know her. And she said to me, Mr. Schumer, she wasn't an angry person. She was a nice person. She was a God-fearing person, a church-going lady. She said, if I only could get, and she was only asking for $2, $3 more an hour. She said, when I pass a McDonald's with my kids, my two daughters, they can actually go in and see what's it like to eat in there. I could actually buy them one or two of the things they want for Christmas. That's all I want. She should be able to have that. We should pass a minimum wage. We need to fund our schools. We can't have teachers be the kicking around post. My kids went to public schools. I went to public schools. They got a great education because they had great teachers. We have slashed our schools. We have kicked around our teachers. And we got to make it easier to pay for college. I agree with the idea that college should be, if you deserve to get into college, you should go there. I'll tell you one other thing we have to do. This would be number 2 on my list. Y'all get to number 1 in a minute. We got to get rid of these damn free trade agreements that kill the working people of America once and for all. And if I become majority leader, we're going to have a whole different way to look at trade. You know, the average person has I'll never forget, 1994. They needed my vote for NAFTA. I was a middle-level congressman. The President of the United States, Bill Clinton, I didn't agree with him on this, but he called me. He said, I really need you, and I'll never forget if you vote with me. I said, Mr. President, I can't do that. It'll hurt too many working people. I said, I don't care if these free trade agreements raise corporate profits. They probably will. I don't care if these free trade agreements even increase GDP. If they're going to take away middle-class incomes, I am going to vote against them, and I have, and I will oppose TPP. I will oppose it coming to the floor. I will do everything I can to change trade around. And number one, on the economic front, this is just the economic reasons we need to change in the election, is to build back labor. You struggle with it every day. I know the work you do in organizing, and I know your successes, and that's why I was so happy to take a picture with 9A out there, and hopefully the victory with Columbia today. But it's much harder because the laws are stacked against you completely. One of the greatest mistakes we made in the 2 years we had the majority was not getting card check on the books, one way or the other. It was my bill. I was for it. And we're going to fight hard to change the labor laws if I get elected. We got to compel them to arbitrate. Once you have a union, they better sit down and arbitrate. Not just sit there. The number one reason we need a strong LLRB. We're not going to have any milquetoast, any people who say, on the one side, on the other side. We're going to get a pro-labor NLRB and not let anyone who isn't pro-labor through. Because the number one reason, above every other, including all the ones I mentioned, where the hard right prevented anything from happening, the hard right pushed the free trade, they slashed education, they slashed infrastructure, they're against minimum wage. But their number one goal was to destroy the union, and is to destroy, not just modify, destroy. You saw what they did on the Supreme Court. And they'll try again. If we don't get the majority in the Senate and Hillary's not president and we get a good Supreme Court, they'll go right back at it and try from the Supreme Court to get rid of all unions, public side, private side, and everywhere else. And the number one reason that middle-class incomes are not going up is because of the percentage of people who are organized. Plain and simple. It was the union movement in the 30s, in the 20s, and all before that in American history. We had a few very wealthy people and a lot of poor people and a weak middle class. And the labor movement changed all that and created the glory days when America was 35% organized after we passed the NLRB and NLRA and all the labor laws, and 35% of America was organized, and that was before public sector was organized at all. And we created the golden years, 1950 to 1980, when Americans believed in the future, and in large part they believed in the future because their unions were getting them better wages and better benefits and better pensions and just the things the average middle-class person wants, better working conditions. And now we're 6%. And there's a direct line between middle-class incomes going down and the fact that not enough of America is organized. So our goal, should we take the presidency and get back the Senate, is to change the laws so instead of every year the percentage staying flat or going down, the percentage starts going up and the middle class is rebuilt. So ladies and gentlemen, we have an economic imperative to take back the Senate, to take the House, and to win the presidency. Now, we also have a political imperative. This system has been rigged by those right-wing oligarchs. Through the Supreme Court, they took away voting rights. The Supreme Court, that great caller of balls and strikes, John Roberts, he is no caller of balls and strikes. He calls it against the working people, against average Americans, no matter which kind of pitch comes in. He said, we don't need the Voting Rights Act anymore. There's going to be no discrimination. The minute they did that, 19 states put in laws that made you have to do the triathlon before you could vote. They went after unions. They went after all kinds of regulations that protected consumers and protected workers. And the worst thing they did was allow these handful of oligarchs, the Koch brothers and their pals to just control the electoral process through Citizens United. This year, the Koch brothers will spend more against our Senate candidates than all of our candidates will spend put together, just the Koch brothers, because of this awful decision, Citizens United. And unless we change it, there's a different America. The good news is, it's not that far away from changing. It is a Supreme Court decision. But if Hillary becomes president and we get the majority in the Senate, we will get a progressive majority in the Supreme Court, and I guarantee you, I believe one of the first things they will do within a year is get rid of Citizens United, the worst decision in America since Dred Scott. And you know, once they get rid of Citizens United, you know who funded all these campaigns in Wisconsin and Ohio and all these places to get rid of labor? That was the same people. Same people who are working against our candidates now, the Koch brothers et al. So we have a political imperative to change. And in conclusion, we have a moral imperative. It's not just economic. It's not just political. We all love this country. I love this country. My father was an exterminator. He went into my grandfather's business. He did no better. He didn't go to college. He got back from World War II. He had to go into that junky little business. And I'm a U.S. Senator. What an effing country we have. And that story can be repeated over and over and over and over and over again. And the reason we have that country is because the people have faith in it. And they look at that statue and they say, things are going to get better for me. Things are going to be better for my kids. Well, if we have another 4 years of this, where the Koch brothers and the hard right strangles our political process, and middle-class incomes continue to decline, and it's harder and harder to organize all the new people who are coming into the workforce, and we can't build infrastructure, and we can't fund our schools, and we can't raise the minimum wage, and do so many other things we have to do. These people could lose, our people, American people, could just lose faith in the whole system. And then, folks, Lord knows what will happen. We'll have a different country, not the country we know, not the optimistic, diverse, smiling America that we love, that was the refuge for the generations, that to this very day the whole world looks up to. You know, Donald Trump says, "Make America great again." I hope you watched the Olympics and saw how great America is. So we have a moral imperative to bring this back. A moral imperative. Because we could lose our grip on this country. We could just lose the average middle-class person who still has faith, based on the generations of work, so much of it done by labor, and the predecessors of the folks sitting up on this stage on whose shoulders you, they, and me stand. They could lose faith. We cannot let that happen. So I ask you, do what labor has always done, but even more so. Make every effort to see that we take back America. Make every effort to see that we elect Hillary as president and get a Democratic majority in the House and Senate. Make every effort so that we can reverse the decline of the middle class and strengthen the labor movement in America. And then, my friends, that torch that we all believe in, that we love so much, the American dream will once again burn brightly in every American, and we will have taken back this great country of ours. Thank you for your endorsement. Thank you for your friendship. And thank you most of all for what you do every single day. God bless the labor movement, and God bless America.